Let's just take a moment here.
Today, we're going to talk about something really heavy, a deeply painful and complex part of Canadian history, the residential school system. And our goal with this explainer isn't just to go over what happened. It's to really try and understand the huge moral questions it brings up and to look at what the path toward real reconciliation actually means. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with why this was a national crime, then look at the findings of genocide. We'll touch on how the gospel was betrayed, and then explore a biblical model for repair called the path of Zacchaeus. After that, we'll see what reparation really demands, and finally, what reconciliation as justice looks like. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, first up, a national crime. And it's so important to get this right from the start. The residential school system, it wasn't an accident, not at all. This was a deliberate government-run policy, and its entire purpose was to assimilate Indigenous peoples, all of it built on this colonial idea of racial and cultural superiority.
And just look at this timeline. This wasn't some brief, terrible chapter. We're talking about a system that started way back in the late 1800s and ran for over 100 years. A century. It really wasn't until the 1980s that activists started forcing people to listen and acknowledge the damage. And that long road led to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report in 2015. I mean, this was a trauma that spanned generations. And the sheer scale, it's just staggering. Over the years, around 150,000 children, 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit kids were forcibly taken from their homes, from their families, and put into these schools.
And what was the goal? Well, it was laid out with horrifying clarity. This quote from historian John S. Milloy says it all. The system's aim was to kill the Indian in the child. Let that sink in. The whole point was to completely wipe out Indigenous languages, cultures, spirituality, their entire identity.
So what do you even call a system with a goal like that? Well, that's where the work of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, becomes absolutely essential. After listening to almost 7,000 survivors tell their stories, the TRC came to a powerful conclusion. What happened was cultural genocide. Now, this definition here is so important to understand. We're not talking about physical extermination in the traditional sense. We're talking about the deliberate destruction of everything that allows a group of people to exist as a people.
And here's how they did it. The schools were basically Christian conversion programs. Kids were punished, often brutally, for speaking their own languages. And the TRC was crystal clear on this. When you take children from their families to erase their culture, that is cultural genocide. It was all built on this awful colonial belief that they were bringing civilization to savage people.
And this brings us to a really deep and painful contradiction, because the very groups running a lot of these schools for the government were Christian churches, and what they were doing was the complete opposite of their own faith's core message. Even Pope Francis later called it what it was: disastrous errors, incompatible with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So to really get a handle on this betrayal, I want to tell you a story from the Bible that shows a totally different way. It's the story of a guy named Zacchaeus. He was this rich tax collector, basically working for the Roman Empire, and he got wealthy by taking advantage of his own people. But then Zacchaeus has this incredible encounter with Jesus, and it completely changes him. And listen to what he does. He doesn't just say, "Oops, my bad." No. His response is real, it's public, and it costs him. He pledges to give away half of his stuff and pay back anyone he cheated 4 times over. You see? For him, justice wasn't just about words. It was about action. I mean, look at the difference here. It could not be more clear. On one side, you have Zacchaeus' path, giving wealth back, paying for what was taken, and cutting ties with the empire. And on the other side, you have the path the residential school system took, taking children, destroying culture, and serving the colonial state. They are polar opposites. Hey, just a quick pause here. We really believe that digging into these tough histories is incredibly important. So if you agree, and if you're getting something out of this, it would mean a lot if you'd subscribe to the channel and like this video. It honestly helps us so much to keep making content like this. Okay, let's get back to it and see how this all applies today. All right, so let's connect the dots. How does this ancient story give us a blueprint for today? Well, the path of Zacchaeus isn't just some old tale. It's actually a powerful model for what real reparation and justice could look like, right here, right now. Now, when we use the word reparations, we need to be really clear about what we mean. This is not about charity. It's not a handout. It's a demand for big structural changes rooted in justice. It's about challenging the massive inequalities we see today and admitting where they came from: colonialism and slavery. And this is happening right now. As you can see, the call for reparations is a huge part of modern movements for justice. It's all about drawing a straight line from the injustices of the past to the inequalities that still exist today.
Okay, so what does this actually look like? What are people asking for? Well, it's not just a vague idea. We're talking about real, concrete policy changes.
So, the calls are super specific. We're talking about things like progressive wealth taxes, carbon taxes on big corporations, even a tax on financial transactions. Campaigns like one called Zack Tax are pushing for these modern economic tools to be used for justice. And while a lot of this is aimed at global issues like colonialism and slavery, it gives us a really solid framework for thinking about what real economic repair could look like for the communities torn apart by the residential school system here in Canada.
And this idea of debt cancellation is especially powerful. The argument is pretty simple. A lot of the debt held by countries that were impoverished by colonialism is basically illegitimate. It's just the same old system of extraction in a new form. So canceling that debt, that's a direct form of reparation. And all of this brings us to what might be the most important point of all. You can't have true reconciliation without justice. It's not enough to just say sorry. It has to go way beyond words and lead to real, deep, systemic change.
And look, apologies have happened. As you can see here, over the decades, churches and the Canadian government have formally apologized. And don't get me wrong, that's a crucial first step. Acknowledging the truth is vital. But it's just that, a first step. It's the starting line, not the finish line.
So reconciliation isn't a thing you achieve. It's a thing you do. It's an ongoing process. It's a commitment to keep telling the truth, to support healing, and to actually build a new kind of relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. A relationship that's finally based on respect and justice. And beautiful, powerful symbols like this reconciliation pole, they're not trophies for a job well done. They're signposts on a journey that is nowhere near finished.
So we're going to leave you with this question. And it's not meant to wrap things up, but to get things started. When you look at all of this, the history, the incredible harm done, and the paths to justice we've talked about, it's clear this isn't just a question for the government or for the church. It's a question for every single one of us. What does true reconciliation demand of you and of me today?